Hey guys, I hope everybody's having a fantastic day. Whether you're watching this in the morning, in the afternoon, or in the evening, I'm glad you're here. Um, Guys, I want to say thank you to the channel members. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I want to say thank you to all the people that subscribe to the channel. And I want to say thank you to anyone who just comes in to watch my knife, my EDC content. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Today is kind of a random video where I'm going to go through my collection and I'm going to highlight the different blade steels that are in my collection that I've collected that are currently still in my collection, right? There are going to be some steels that aren't in here, and I'm not going to give breakdowns on the performance of the steels. That would be in smaller videos where we come back and we do maybe tool steels versus stainless, things like that. So this is just basically a show and tell of different blade steels, starting with my old Buck 110 that is just basic old 440C stainless steel. If I'm not mistaken. I don't see that on there anywhere. But I think it's 440 stainless steel. Just very basic. But a good steel. A good steel for good enough for everybody for years. And then, just kind of became a steel that was easily outperformed by others, right? Then, though I'm kind of going through this in terms of maybe cost, but not really altogether cost. But we've got D2, which is kind of a tool steel that does have some stainless properties. Really, a lot of people hate on D2. And I guess it's because a lot of the Chinese D2, the quality, the actual composition, the heat treat has been questionable. A lot of custom makers swear by D2. They really like D2. I think it's a good steel. I've had good luck with my D2. This is the Boker Invictus. It's got a thick D2 blade with a BG Hill reed grind on it. Fantastic knife. Blade steel's been great. Haven't really dealt with any corrosion, any rust, so to speak of. I've got a little spot there that if I wanted to just go ahead and knock that out, I could just hit it with my rust eraser. And just knock that rust off there. Again, is it anything that bothers me? No. Is it anything that's substantial? No. Is it anything that I keep up with? Yeah, I'll look at it. This one's probably due to be taken apart and oiled up. I use a rag that I keep some KPL, not their blade cleaner. I keep the actual blade oil, which is mainly for kitchen knives, but it's just a tool steel rust preventative oil. And I usually keep my blades oiled up with that, regardless of what they are. If I'm not using them for a while, it is food safe, works great. D2, I think, is a very good steel. Gets a lot of hate, but I know a lot of makers use it. Medford uses D2. I think there's several others. They can maybe Protec, but they're using real D2, right? CPM D2. This is just good old Boker Chinese D2, but it served itself well. I'm a fan. I like it. It's fine. Then I've got some Demko knives that are made of AUS 10A. AUS 10A is a stainless steel. Not the greatest, not the highest end. I wouldn't call it necessarily a super steel, but it is a good steel, right? Keeps the cost down in the knife. I've sharpened this knife several times on my TS Prof, reprofiled it. The steel seems heat treated very well. I didn't have a problem, luckily, on any of my Demkos, and a couple of these are early versions. I've got some in other blade steels, which you'll see as we kind of go through this. But the Demko AUS 10A has performed well for me. It's a fine steel. I have no problem with it, no hate for it. It's been good. And like I said, I've got it on a couple of my Demkos. Then we move on to another stainless steel. And this is on my MASH kind of 2.6. This is a clone, not a clone. That's the wrong thing to say. This is a mod. This is basically a MASH 2.5 that has a MASH 2, I think, blade. It's a 14C 28N blade. I did a blade swap and get a blacked out MASH and then get this MASH. So 154CM was one of my blades, or some of my MASH blades, and my other MASH blades are 154. But this is 154CM. This is another value steel that I really, really like. I've sharpened this knife. It is an absolute laser beam. The edge holds up fine for what I use it for. I think it's a great pocket knife steel. I think it really splits the goal between toughness, edge retention, and corrosion resistance pretty well. But we're not going to talk about steels that much in this one, just kind of pointing them out. So this is 14C 28N on the MASH. We move on up, we come to this little guy, which is my Kizer Drop Bear. And this Kizer Drop Bear has the aluminum handles and the 154 CM blade steel. I have not sharpened this because it came as an absolute laser beam. Came very sharp, has not needed to be sharpened yet, has cut through a good bit of cardboard. We can cut through a little bit of cardboard now if we wanted to, just to show you that it is just an absolute little slicer. And the 154CM, like I say, is a steel that I've always liked. I've got it on a lot of my Finch collection, a lot of other knives that I have. It's not my probably most collected steel, but I've got a good bit of it, right? In terms of budget steel, I've got a good bit of 154CM. So this is the Drop Bear in 154CM. You see that a lot of times interchanged with 14C 28N. A lot, price point being very, very similar there from what I can tell. And then you come to one of my fave budget steels, which is this Nitro V, like is on this Brian Brown Civivi collaboration called the X1. Very similar to what I consider a budget Jaeger. And I think this is probably going to be my budget knife of 2024. Even though it's very, very basic, it's got a wonderful hollow ground blade. I'm a huge fan of the Brian Brown Jaeger. I love my Jaeger Model M. This has got a fuller that you can blade flick all the way anywhere you put your finger on that blade. It's sharp enough to catch and let you get very easy deployment. Also has a great regular flipper tab. But this is Nitro V, a great steel, works very well for me. It is a budget steel, or I would say a lesser expensive steel, probably not considered a super steel, but it's super slicey, works very well. I'm a big fan of Nitro V. Civivi uses it quite a bit now, and there are other companies that use it. So that's what I think I'll look for in budget steels. You look at D2, there's a lot of that out there, kind of come and gone. Look at 154CM, look at 14C 28N, and then Nitro V. Also VG10, I don't have any of that, but I prefer the Nitro V. So we're going to keep moving on through the steel. And there's another budget steel that I was not at all familiar with. And this is part of a kitchen steel series, from my understanding. It's SLD Magic steel, and this is done with a San Mai type of steel. So this is the SLD Magic. It's got some kind of core. But this knife is extremely sharp and slicey. The edge retention on it has been very good. It's got, again, it's not a slicey grind. It's a thicker blade, but in terms of opening packages, opening whatever you need to open, it's very, very slicey. And the SLD Magic keeps the cost of this knife way down there. So this knife was $108 for a fully automatic out the front from Max Ace. Has really nice aluminum handle with this kind of grippy type of inset inlays, and then it just fires out several different blades styles. And this is the drop point, and this is a blade steel called SLD Magic, one I was not at all aware of, but I've enjoyed it. It's been sharp. I'm a fan. Moving on up the steel ladder, or just looking at steels, this is my Spyderco Sage 5. It's an imported Spyderco from Taichung, Taiwan, but it's probably one of my faves. It's got a profile and size that's a little bit smaller than my Manix, but it has that same type of shape, which a lot of Spydercos do. I look at this one as more of a bulbousy, tall-bladed Spyderco than the thinner PM2 style Spyderco, but it's very light, very thin, in Spyderco's basic CPM S30V blade steel. I think this is, in my opinion, entry-level super steel. I think it contains all the properties that a super steel really needs to contain, but it's not as highly sought after as some of the newer steels, because as metallurgy changes, I think people just want to keep it fresh, right? I personally think that we've had great advances in steel, right? And metallurgy is kind of like a science, but it is a science. And then it's up to the maker, the manufacturer, the OEM to then use that steel and treat it properly to get it to perform at what the formula from the metallurgy, the people who designed and developed the steel, intended it to be used for. So there's a lot of debate about what's the best steel for this, what's the best steel for that, and it really does depend on your use. So for me, my use is so light, I don't have any problem with S30V. I love it for what it costs, for what it does. I've got a lot of Spyderco knives that have S30V and haven't had any problem out of any of them. So from my experience, I've had a good run with S30V. So we move on and we come to S35VN, which is another, I think it's a crucible steel. This is a 8010 cold steel, made over in Taiwan as well, with a S35VN blade. A lot of my American knives, my American-made knives, like my Medfords, most of my Medfords, some of my other knives are S35VN. It's a blade steel, if I'm not mistaken, was developed or partially developed by Chris Reeves. So it's a knife focus steel. It's since been replaced with, for one, CPM S45VN. The difference, I'm not really sure. But this is not a Medford, what am I saying? This is my Hinderer XM18. It is in S45VN. These are kind of dirty, so I'll just figure I'll clean them up while I've got them out. Great knife, great blade steel, crucible steel, which is American made. Uberlohn Böhler makes a lot of the M390s and some of the steels over in Germany. But this is CPM S45VN. My understanding is it has a little bit better edge retention, maybe a little better toughness, and a little more corrosion resistance than even S35VN. Maybe like they just tweaked it a little bit. Then you've got blade steels that are a little bit different, like on the Hinderer Eclipse. This is another crucible blade steel that's very popular, and I have it in a lot of my American-made knives. I have it in a lot of my WE knives, and you see it more and more being used because I think it is a very good steel. It's a super steel. I still like it. It's one of my kind of faves. It's very similar to M390. From what I understand, it's Crucibles, which is the American steelmaker's version of CPM 20CV. What Böhler Uberlohn did to mimic this steel was come up with M390. So my understanding is they perform very similarly. I don't know that for a fact. I'm not a steel guy, but I do know that CPM S45 is good. I really enjoy it. It's performed great on this knife, which has also been sharpened, reprofiled to 19 degrees. Super, super sharp, super slicey. Great knife. Great blade steel, but that's CPM S45VN. So let's take a little turn and let's look at one of the more unique steels, which is this ZDP 189. ZDP 189, extremely hard steel. It is, I've got a little Dragonfly, which I should have brought out here because it's solid 189, ZDP 189. This has got the San Mai core on this particular Monterey Bay Knives Turbo. It is ZDP 189. It is very, very tough. It's got a very strong edge retention, and it's pretty corrosion resistant. It is a sharp, slicey, tough-edged beast. This is more of a tactical blade geometry, more so than a slicey blade geometry, but it still slices very, very good. ZDP 189 is a steel that I really like. Again, I have had no problems with it. I do like the San Mai. I like the uniqueness of the blade, and it's just a good one. So we're going to keep moving on so we don't go too slow. And we're going to come to this little Demko, which is in this Taiwanese 3V, right? CPM 3V. There's all kinds of Vs. 3V, 15V, a lot of Spyderco uses it. I'm not that familiar with it. I won't talk about it a lot, but I do have some. I have this 3V in this folder. I've got it in Fixies too, but this is in a folder, and it is in my Demko 8020.5 3V, made in Taiwan. Pretty good hard steel. I've been pleased with it. Works fine, as all of these do. Then we come to S90V. Probably one of my favorites. One of my favorite steels for pocket knives, the way I use knives, EDC-wise, is S90V. This is the Medford Slim Midi. This is the DLT version. DLT's exclusive version with Medford is an S90V. The way they designate that on their blades is with the 9. The blade mark, the 9 designates it being S90V, but really a well-performing steel. Really, to me, is a great balance between toughness, edge retention, corrosion resistance. I think it's one of the stronger steels. I think it rates really highly. I love it. CPM S90V is a winner. Then we come to M390, which is on a lot of my knives. Maybe the steel that, I know at one time it was on most of my knives, but it's on a lot of knives. It is made by Uberlohm Bowler, or whoever, who does the other steels over in Germany. And M390 is a great steel. For a while, it was used by everybody that was doing premium knives. Koenig, for example, uses it. They also use CPM 20CV, which is a very similar, like I say, performance type of steel, but cuts very well, works very well, is a premium steel for sure, and I like it. I've got it on a lot of knives. I think it has been used kind of excessively, and I kind of collect stuff, so for me, getting different steels is kind of part of the fun too. But anyway, that is M390. I know you guys are all going to be familiar with that, but that is M390, and it is a great steel. So moving on, we come to a version of M390 that has been tweaked just a little bit by Microtech. They are, they wanted to have it be their own. So this Microtech stitch, the Ramlock stitch, is an M390 MK. So they've tweaked a little bit of the formula, just a tad, for their steel. And now we're getting into some of my more popular, I guess you'd say, steels that I really, really like. Of course, the S90V is right up there. 154 CM, not CM 154, but 154 CM. It's a fantastic steel that I really, really like. One of my faves, probably one of my favorite all-around steels, is Vanex, like is in my Padre here or in my Quiet Carries. Truly a rust-resistant steel. I mean, really an ocean-type use steel. It's highly, highly corrosion resistance, has good edge retention, has very good cutting properties. I'm a huge fan of Vanex. I love it. I also am a huge fan of Elmax, like on this Liang Ma Field Duty EDC. This is the Elmax, and it is a very corrosion resistant, works very well. I've sharpened this knife up. It felt great on a stone. It cuts very, very well. I've got Elmax on a lot of different knives. It's one of my favorite blade steels. I even did a video on Elmax knives in my collection. But Elmax is, again, one of my favorite blade steels. It's definitely a super steel, and it is right there on that Liang Ma. So now we will look at a couple of tool steels. Kind of a rare steel for me, a steel I'd never seen before. This is a tool steel that Strider uses, PD number 1 or PD1. Very, very rugged tool steel, tough, great edge retention. It is treated blade, so corrosion is going to be kept at bay by that. Then I've got a couple of Spydercos that have this blade steel, CTS XHP. I absolutely love this stuff. This is one of my favorite steels in terms of sliciness and just like literally being able to get an edge that won't stop. I mean, it is an absolute shredder. I love CTS XHP. And then you've got Cruwear, which again is a fantastic steel. I love it. You see it on a lot of quality knives like the Benchmade Mini Adamas. I've seen it on some of my Spydercos, and I've got it, of course, on my Lamia, my SPK Lamia. And then we also have the Venatus. This is a steel I'd never experienced. This is why I picked up this particular brand. It's the St. Nick's exclusive, which is in this Venatus steel. Super tool steel, allegedly, that's really tough. Corrosion resistant to a point, but more tough and edge retention than anything else. Looks like it's getting a little bit of, needs a little rub with their eraser right there, and this will jack up your finishes on your blades, but I'm big into just not letting it get started. Get that surface rust off of there. But this is a very good steel. Again, a reason I picked up this knife was for this steel. I'd never heard of it before, never used it, and wanted to have it in the collection. And it is Venatus, so probably mispronounced that. But guys, that brings us to probably the most hype and a steel that I've got quite a bit of. I really like it. The jury's out on it. A lot of people say good things, a lot of people say not so good things. A lot of people debate what's the best HRC, where should it be, and it is MagnaCut, designed, developed by Laren Thomas, a metallurgist who's well known in the knife community as a steel that would be perfectly suited for pocket knives. I don't know the science behind it. Guys, I don't do cut tests. I just cut boxes, paper, everyday things, fruit, maybe some sticks, twigs, do some whittling. But MagnaCut's performed very well for me. The MagnaCut that I've had has come from ProTech, companies like TRM. Trying to think where else my MagnaCut comes from. Hinderer, and it's just been very, very good. And I'm sure those heat treats are kind of all around the board in terms of between those different companies that I just mentioned, but it's performed well, right? So the point of this video is there are a lot of blade steels out there. I've just scratched the surface. I don't own all the blade steels. I don't own probably most of the blade steels used. I know custom makers use a lot of not necessarily exotic steels, but they use tried and true, proven, good blade steels. And there's nothing wrong with using something that's proven, that's tried and true. Why change if it's not broken, right? If it performs for the task that you need, it's going to be the blade steel that you want to use. That's just my philosophy. But guys, this was, again, not to try to teach people about blade steels, because hell, I need to learn about blade steels. This was just to kind of show some blade steels that are in my collection, get some feedback if you guys care for any of these blade steels, or if there are other blade steels that you like better that I might have missed out on. But to wish you guys just a great holiday weekend. Hope you're having, this should go out on Friday. If you're around tonight, we are going to do Friday Night Flicks. Stop by for that. If you're so inclined, hit that subscribe button and that bell notification. Give me a like or dislike, but most importantly, please look out for the guy or gal to your left. Please look out for the guy or gal to your right. Please look out for each other. Go forward with love in your hearts and choose debate, not hate. I love you all. Peace.